Google Colaboratory or Colab is a very interesting tool in research, especially for sharing and presenting results. We use many Google Colab notebooks in our tutorials at the UMNL University of Technology, and also my other tutorials, and we use it for many different applications in research, in audio, machine learning, data science. So it's a tool that allows to run code, have mathematical expressions, display different types of media. A very powerful tool. It also gives access to GPUs, for example, and it's running on the cloud, so you don't need any specific configuration on your local machine, and you can basically run from anywhere you are if you have access to the internet. So Google Colab is built on top of Jupyter notebooks. So before we jump into the Google Colab, let's talk about Jupyter notebook. So Jupyter Notebooks is an open source web application that allows to create and share documents containing live code, containing equations, containing visualizations, containing text, and you can run it locally. You can also run it remotely. So with different complementary tools such as Binder, for example, you can store your notebooks in a GitHub, and then with Binder you can create a remote environment that uses the files that you define in your GitHub to configure this environment, and then you can launch your notebooks from this GitHub that are stored in this GitHub in a remote environment. You can also you have the Jupyter Hub, and you can have a server, and you can connect many clients to the server. So it's a very, very interesting tool, very powerful tool, especially when we want to share and we want to present results. So the Jupyter notebooks consist on web applications, so as a browser-based tool for interactive authoring of documents. They can combine, for example, code. So it exists different kernels. We can run code in different languages like Python, R. There is also a possibility to use a C++, JavaScript, Node.js, Java. There are many different kernels that can be used. Also, we can use HTML to display HTML code. We can use LaTeX for displaying mathematical equations, and basically there's this in-browser application for editing of code. There is we can execute code from the browser. We can display the results. We can export the notebooks in many different types of different types. We can export as a PDF. We can export as a HTML. And these notebooks, they're basically saved as JSON files using this IPyNB extension. And since JSON is a text format, we can also use version control, and it's very easy to share with other people. You can install this both the classic version of Jupyter notebooks as well as JupyterLab, and JupyterLab is a web-based IDE for Jupyter notebooks. So you have these two possibilities. Each one has its advantages and its disadvantages, and I'm not going into detail on Jupyter and classic Jupyter notebooks or JupyterLabs because we are going to use Google Colab. So Google Colab is built on top of these Jupyter notebooks, but it has its special modifications and special features, also with disadvantages and advantages. So I highly recommend that you start using Jupyter Notebook so you can install on your computer, and I recommend that you use the Conda package manager for that. So if you install Anaconda, for example, you already have many features available, including Jupyter Notebooks and Python, many Python libraries, and I highly recommend that you use the best of all worlds available. So we can use the Google Colab, when we can use also a local version of Jupyter Notebooks together, for example, with your Anaconda installation or your Conda environment, because sometimes we don't have access to the internet and we want to work offline. Then if you have Python or Jupyter notebooks running on your local machine, you can work and then you can save and then upload to remote servers, work locally and save a Jupyter notebook, and then you can execute this notebook in a Colab environment. We just need to pay attention in what are the specific things of Jupyter notebooks that will not run on the Colab environment, and what is the specific things in a Colab environment that will not run on a classic Jupyter notebook, and also the differences between if you're using JupyterLab, if you're using the classic notebook. So basically, the notebook consists of a sequence of cells, and the cells, they can be different types of cells. We can have text cells, we can have code cells, and we can execute these cells by hitting Shift Enter, for example, or by pressing a play button at the toolbar or running from the menu. And we can have access to code cells, markdown cells, raw cells, and this is the same concept also in Google Colab. So some advantages of Google Colab, that it comes pre-configured with many things already installed. This can be an advantage but also a disadvantage. So if you want to run remotely and you want to run it fast, to have an environment that is pre-configured with most of the important libraries that we use, you can already start the Google Colab and start using it. So, but if you want to use different packages that they are not installed, pre-installed on Colab, you have to install it by yourself, or sometimes you need to uninstall if you want to use, for example, a different version of a Python package. You need to uninstall it from the Google Colab and then reinstall. So this can be a disadvantage, but for me the best advantage is that you have all access, limited access, but it's let's say fair access to GPUs, and this can improve the speed of your experiments, especially if you're doing some machine learning, deep learning experiments. It can be very much faster than if you're running locally on your computer, especially if you don't have a GPU available. So how we use Google Colab? We can go to Google and we type Google Colab. Here we'll find colabresearchgoogle.com. When we click here, it will start this page with this welcome to Colaboratory notebook. So we see here it's called intro.ipynb. So it's Basically, this is a JSON file, and then the Colab is reading this JSON and organizing this notebook the way we are seeing here. So we have here some cells, and we have here menu with we can start a new notebook. We can open a new notebook that is saved, for example, in your environment. We can upload a notebook. So if we have a notebook on our computer and we want to upload the notebook and then use in the Colab environment, we can do this. Colab environment is also connected to the Google Drive, so we can save files and access files from the Google Drive. We can also save a copy in GitHub. We can also download the notebook as an IPy notebook, or we can also download as a Python file. Here we have the menus. We have file, edit, where we can paste, delete cells, find. We can have settings of the notebooks. We have view. We can insert different types of cells. There is this runtime where we can, for example, select hardware accelerator. So we have GPUs. Also we have TPUs. So here we have some information about the types of GPUs that are available in Colab. So depending on the time you are using, depending where you're from, you can be allocated a certain type of GPU, sometimes more powerful, sometimes less powerful. And also here it tells you how long you can run a notebook in Colab, because of course this is a free tool and you cannot use it as much as you want. So there are some limitations. For example, some lifetime of a notebook can be as much as 12 hours. If you're running a very long experiment, you need to be aware of this limitation and then save your files constantly so you don't lose any information. There's also limitations on memory. There is also limitations on the type of hardware accelerator that you were allocated, like I said before. Then we have some settings and help. Here we have a table of contents. For example, we have here a text cell. We put here a markdown language, for example. So here in this text cells we can have plain text, we have access to markdown, we have access to HTML, for example, and then these headings will be showing here. So heading getting started, we have data science, and this will show here on the table of contents. We can also find things. Here we can run some snippets and also access some snippets. So how we can do things, for example, camera capture. Here comes some snippets on how we can do different things. And here we have a file browser, but first we need to sign in. So you cannot run a Colab notebook if you don't have a Google account. So you need a Google account to use the Google Colab. You can visualize, but you cannot run anything. So you need to sign in, and then when you sign in, you will have access to all these features. So now I signed in into this Colab, and I can start running things. Also, I will have access to the file. So first I need to connect to a runtime to enable file browsing. So now here we see it's connected. We can manage sessions and do different things here. Here we also see the memory that is being used, active sessions. So it's very important. If you're using too much memory, then your notebook can crash. Too much memory in terms of run, and also if you have too much written on disk. So now here we have our files. We're browsing files. It comes, for example, with some sample data that we can use, like the MNIST data set. Here we can also see everything. So it's a Linux server that is running this application. We have here different things that are already installed. So let's go back here to the table. Let's close this part. Let's see. Here are the cells, and we can run the cells, for example, by pressing Shift Enter. So when we press, this is a text cell, so we can edit. So here we see that we can use, for example, HTML. We can use also Markdown, test. Then when I press here, there's a preview, the test, so it's a heading. Shift Enter, I will run. Oh, here also we'll see that there's heading here, test. We can also have, for example, code cells. So here is a Python script, just an example, seconds in a day, 24 times 60 times 60. We execute. So if we press display here, or if we press Shift Enter, it will execute this code and it gives us this calculation. We can also move cells up and down. We can link to cells. We can open some settings to change the font size, for example. We can also delete a cell, and we can copy cells. We can clear the output of the cell, for example. Clear. There is also a possibility of hiding outputs if we want, for example, hiding the input cell. For example, if we just want to display the results and not the code that used to generate this output. We will also be able to have plots, graphics. There is a lot of things pre-installed, and we will start now taking a look on text cells.